for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.
Hey everybody, it's me, Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and today is June 18, 2020, and it is time for Office Hours Ask Me Anything, which means you get to ask me anything. I apologize that I'm still doing a skin peel, so I know I look a little strange to the people watching the video. Just know it'll take a few more days and I'll be back to whatever normal is for me. So as always, this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. I take questions mostly on CX and UX, any aspect of it, but really you can ask me absolutely anything. This is your time to get answers to whatever questions you have, should you want them answered by me, with my opinions or my experiences. And I have no questions today from the that I received during the week. Sometimes I get questions during the week, which is a beautiful thing. And so let me put up this. So this is the URL if you want to ask a question anonymously, but that is optional because if you are watching live and you would like to ask a question through LinkedIn or YouTube, I am monitoring those chats and you can ask questions there as well. So I see right now we've got someone watching in YouTube. I find it usually takes some minutes for people to join in and ask their questions, but I usually stick around for an hour. So I am here to answer whatever questions you have. All questions are welcome, assuming they are not disgusting and unforgivable. So any questions you have are welcome. As always, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's Delta CX. I go live usually at least once or twice a week, so you want to know about that. And sometimes I also post other videos. Everything is educational and totally free. There is no subscription. There is no secret club. Just come on and get the information you need as you need it. Also, we've got a Slack workspace if you'd like to join that, and also have some direct access to me and other lovely people who are there. I think we have almost 150 people there now, so it's starting to get cooking a little bit, but we need you there too. So that's deltacx.link/join Slack, and that will dump you in our open invitation to the Slack channel. And of course, our rule is mutual respect and no spamming. Other than that, we welcome everybody there with whatever comments and questions that you have. I also broadcast to the Slack room. There's a live events channel inside Slack, and it gets updates on all of the things that I'm doing. So if you've ever wondered what's Debbie doing next and how can I find out, join the Slack workspace, join the live events channel, and you'll see constant reminders, or not constant, but daily reminders of what's coming up that is live. So this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, and normally I wait around for questions, but I don't see any questions yet. So hello. Maggie says, I can't believe it's Thursday already. I know, Maggie. Normally I do office hours on Tuesdays, everybody, so mark your calendars for Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. Italy time, whatever time that is for you. I had to move it to Thursday because Tuesday I went to see an allergist. And that was good. So hey Maggie, how's it going? Hey everybody, I see we have a few people in LinkedIn and a few people on YouTube, and hopefully you guys are here with questions. I always tell people if you're looking for some free help from me, feel free to drop by here and ask your questions. We can talk about careers, CX and UX. We can talk about techniques. We can talk about problems you're having at work, though if you're having a problem, you may want to use the anonymous question asking so that nobody sees who you are or where you work to hear you complaining about it. But again, all questions are welcome, including why is Debbie purposefully peeling off all of her skin? How's it going? Still a little bit crinkly and weird. It's weird. So anybody doing anything with the weekend while we wait for questions? How are you guys? Hopefully everybody's done with their spring allergies. And hopefully everybody is wearing masks out in public. Jason says, "Hey Debbie, what do you think about jobs to be done theory?" Great question. And Jason, good to see you again. I would say I tend to be a little bit more of a task analysis person, which I know is a cousin of jobs to be done. So I would say, in general, whichever approach you take, I currently don't have a strong preference over them. My thought is, whichever approach you take, it's important for us to have studied and researched with our potential customers, our actual customers, our target customers or users, however you see them. I tend to see them as customers. And to get to know them and get to understand what are their tasks and what do they tend to do in what order. So again, some people go for task analysis, some say jobs to be done. I don't get too caught up in the nitty-gritty of these, and I have to admit I'm not completely familiar with what are the differences between task analysis and jobs to be done, but I'm under the impression that both of them focus on trying to understand exactly what their tasks and goals are when they visit your website, app, system, or whatever. So, of course, as part of deeply understanding our target potential real customers, it's really important to understand why they're there. Because people get that wrong a lot. Sometimes they think, oh, well, we have an e-commerce website, they're here to buy. But not everybody's there to buy. Sometimes the task or job to be done is researching products. Sometimes it's just price comparison. And so we have to really consider the multiple reasons that people have for being on our site, in our system, in our app, in our store, wherever they are, and make sure that we have been deliberately architecting and designing things that will speak directly to what they're trying to accomplish, and that we don't want to accidentally make any of these important tasks difficult for people just because the business wants to make sales. Sure, we want to make sales, but sometimes there are other things to be done, like checking features, checking pricing, checking if it's a physical object, checking shipping costs, things like that. So I hope that helps, Jason. I'm sorry I'm not as knowledgeable as others specifically about the jobs to be done theory, but from what I understand, these are good models to be looking at when looking at deep customer research. And Jason, if you have a follow-up question, please ask. This is your time, and all questions are welcome, and all disagreements are welcome. Agree, disagree, it's all welcome. Maggie says, bait and switch jobs. How do you handle entering a project and realizing, oh, this is not what I expected? I feel like the worst advice my employer has given whenever I raise this as a concern and I ask to be moved has been bite the bullet and hang in there. So let's get the questions on the screen. I think you can see most of them as they come up. So my thought on that is it really depends how bad things are. When things are really bad and unworkable and you feel like you can't bite the bullet, then sometimes you have to look at leaving. It's very hard for me to advise people to leave right now in this economy. I believe that the job market and the economy is going to be bad for the rest of the year and possibly into next year. And I don't want to say to people, oh yeah, just leave your job and go job shopping. Because right now there are just thousands and zillions of unemployed people who are UX and CX specialists, and it is just so crowded of a market. When I look at jobs on LinkedIn, very often by the time I'm seeing them, it'll say over 200 people have applied. I probably have no chance. They already have a zillion billion people. So my thought is probably, I typically don't tell people bite the bullet, and I typically don't tell people hang in there. I typically tell people change what you can and open up some of the difficult conversations and dialogues that should be had, and see what you can do. But obviously, if you have a manager who doesn't have sympathy or empathy for you, then unfortunately we run the risk that this may be a place where you can't stay. But again, knowing that, I'm not in a rush to tell people to just. Sorry, I know you guys are seeing this on the screen. There is a bug in the chat system I'm using where it's reposting, what do you call it? YouTube questions over and over. So maybe today it's not best to show the chat. The chat is a little bit weird and distracting. So today won't show the chat, but I'll get the questions URL back up. in case you guys want to ask questions anonymously, and I'll keep checking my email, but I do not see any emails from there. So, Maggie, again, it really depends on your particular situation. Obviously, when you are in a work situation where you raise a concern and that concern's not taken seriously, and someone says, just deal with it, just hang in there, oh, just, toughen up or whatever. That's not sympathy. That's not empathy. Might not be a good manager. Sure, you can show this to your manager. I think that that might be a place where you're not going to stay long term. But again, given the current job market, I'm not sure I would quit a job before I had the next one because it is such a difficult job market out there now. But if I were you, I would probably be brushing up that resume, brushing up that portfolio, and applying to jobs and seeing if you can make that change. So again, let me roll back to see what the original question was before it was posted 2 million times by my chat software. How do you handle entering a project and realizing it's not what you expected? Yeah. And a lot of times you can't change what the project is because it is what it is, and it was just not correctly represented to you when you interviewed or when you started or when you got shifted to that project. And I have had that problem, and I have left a job 1 month after I started because of a problem like that. But of course, that was during a time where I was rather confident that I would be able to quickly get a new job, which I did. I think it took me a month or two to get a new job after that. So that was when I lived in San Francisco, and it was pretty easy for me to find a lot of work. A little different now. So, Maggie, ask any follow-up questions you have if I can help further. And also, I'm going to start copying and pasting these into the file so that when we post this to YouTube, we can show people what the questions were today. I got to start doing a better job of that. Let's see. So let me know if you guys have follow-up questions to that. And again, people who are watching, if you have a follow-up question to someone else's question, that's absolutely welcome. If you identify with something Maggie's saying and you want to add to it and ask your question, please do. These are not exclusive conversations. I know many people have felt the way Maggie does. So Maggie and Jason, please ask any follow-up questions or other questions that you have. And I don't see any in the anonymous questions, but you guys are welcome to send questions anonymously. It's deltacx.link, which is my URL shortener, /AMA for Ask Me Anything. And I will flip over to LinkedIn. We've got 9 people watching there today. Hello, everybody. What a crowd. Hope you guys are doing okay. This is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, so I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have and any follow-up questions as well. So let's take a look. And no new questions yet, just my system reposting Maggie's question 4,000 times. So I'll save you from that. I'm trying to think of what's going on lately, but not a lot in my world, other than I'm seeing an allergist. Hooray, go me. I'll give you some show notes while we wait for some more questions. Don't forget, next week we've got another great week of live events for everybody, and these are always archived on YouTube, so if you miss them for some reason, just go to the Delta CX channel on YouTube, which you can find at deltacx.tv, always up there in the little corner. That will redirect you to the YouTube channel, and you can always find the archives of everything. And feel free to binge watch. Feel free to watch it 1.5x and hear me talk really fast. So Monday the 22nd will be a podcast on surveys. Surveys, are they any good to do? With special guest Stephanie Walter. Tuesday will be Office Hours Ask Me Anything. And Wednesday will be a podcast on UX titles. What the heck is going on with our job titles, and what should our job titles be, and will we ever agree on these things? So that kind of takes us through next week. End of June, we've got the 29th of June, Making Physical Products Digital with Matteo Graton. I like to say his name in a very Italian way. I don't know if he says it in a Britishy way. We will find out. Tuesday, June 30th will be Office Hours Ask Me Anything. And surprise new edition, Wednesday, July 1st, because you guys asked for it. We've got Celia Hodent coming on, and she's going to talk about UX and gaming. So, talking about UX work in gaming and getting into that field because you guys asked for that, so I scheduled it. And thanks to Celia for joining in. So that's what's coming up on the show in the coming weeks. And as always, you are all welcome to come to me with your ideas for topics for our podcasts. If there's something you want to learn more about, let me know and I'll find an expert on it. And if you would like to be a guest on the show, I require you to have knowledge, passion, and actionable advice. If you've got those, get in touch with me and let's hear what your topic is. So let's see. Scott says, when it comes to recruiting users for research, have you encountered any difficulty getting participants from the B2B space? I found that a little bit trickier in my experience. Good question. I would have to say that I have not had as much trouble with some of my research recruiting because in many cases I have been working at agencies, and very often I've told the client that they need to find me these people. That if they have B2B as a target audience, that I want to give me your customers, give me X number of your customers, give me your salespeople, give me your support people. So usually I am asking people to find me their people. When it comes to recruiting for the B2B space, depending upon how you're doing that, I think you just have to be ready to offer people some very good incentives, probably some sort of money, like on a Tango card or an Amazon gift card, because people, especially when you're asking them to break from their workday just to talk to you, they really value their time. And so I think that getting B2B participants might be easier, whether they're your current customers, potential customers, or just target customer types. You probably need to offer them some sort of money to thank them for what they're doing, unless they are super fans of your company and you can just offer them getting involved and then they're like, woohoo, I love to get involved. So Scott, I'd probably have to know a little bit more, if you can, about who you're looking for and how you're looking for them and why it's not going as well. But I would have to admit that it hasn't always been that hard for me, only because I sometimes lean on the client to say, find me some of these people. I also know some people work with recruiting companies, which can be very expensive, but you can certainly find people, and there, again, you're often giving pretty noticeable incentives. Scott says, I usually do incentives or stress them as much as possible, but I found friction in getting approvals. Our industry is highly regulated. Right. So sometimes it's not appropriate or legal to give people gifts or incentives or money, even if it's to compensate them for their time appropriately. So that is definitely harder. I wonder if you would be allowed to use some of these third-party companies who will do the recruiting for you and pay the incentive for you, and then you're just paying the recruiting company. I don't know if that works for regulations or doesn't work for regulations, because you're paying the recruiters to find you these people and pay the incentives. So I don't know if it's you paying the incentive that makes it bad, or so again, I don't know how your industry is regulated and I don't want to guess. But if you can't compensate people, then you definitely have to work harder, maybe with customer support, or sometimes what some people do is they send out a survey. They send out a survey to determine like satisfaction with something, and they use that survey as a bit of a recruitment tool. What do you think of us, or this, or that, or the other thing, and a couple of questions. And then, from time to time, we run research studies with our customers to learn more about whatever. If you would like to help us improve the product, please put your email and consent here. So I would probably maybe try that, even though I'm not in love with surveys and we'll be poking fun at them on Monday. That might be one way to go. So let me answer Maggie's question and then we'll get to Brian's. Brian, good to see you. How have you been? Maggie says, I've heard you mention how you love Axure. Any other tools you like to use or use a lot? For me personally, no. I am only using Axure, and I pretty much mean only. Sometimes I open Affinity a photo to touch up some images and make some of the images you see, like this image behind me and the logo and stuff. But other than opening up Affinity Photo, which is an inexpensive competitor to Photoshop, I really just live in Axure. I tried Sketch a little bit and I really didn't like it, but I'm also not a visual designer, so I didn't expect to like it. I thought Sketch was the secret baby of OmniGraffle and Illustrator. And I really don't use either of those, again, because I'm not an artist. I've not yet looked at Figma. I tried to poke around Just in Mind many years ago, and I felt like I was back doing calculus, so it didn't appeal to me at the time, but I don't know if they've made it better. Haven't poked around Figma. Generally haven't poked around a lot of these, but I know that being very strong in Axure, I would probably learn a lot of these other things fairly quickly and easily, so I'm not afraid of my tool learning curve time. Like once you know Axure, wow, everything else probably looks like applesauce. But I would have to say I mostly live in Axure for my information architecture and interaction design work. For my research work, I do spend a lot of time in optimalworkshop.com. And that's probably mostly it. I'm probably a little limited in the tools area. I don't use as many different tools as some people do, but I also haven't had projects that have required it. So I'm always open to learn, and I hope to do more projects that use more tools. I did a project last year. Was it really last year? Yeah, I guess it was last year, early last year, first half of last year, where I was technically also the product manager. And I got into a system called AHA, which is AHA.io. And that was really more product management, but on a huge scale. They're really expensive, and I liked it a lot, but I haven't had a good reason to use it. For project management, I use teamwork.com. None of these are paid. Hashtag not sponsored. Nobody pays me for anything. So these are just some of the tools I happen to like, and that changes from time to time. But as of now, that's who I like and who I recommend. Brian says, "What's up with this trend of major companies hiring full-time employees, but as contractors through essentially staff augmentation agencies? And these are a year or more contracts. No vacation, no benefits, kind of BS." Brian, I love those jobs. I love those jobs. So you can tell me why you think that's BS. I know some people don't like that. They want the full-time employment because they feel that that's going to be more stable, that they're less likely to be fired first. I am as the contractor. They want their vacation, they want their benefits, they want all their stuff. And I actually love doing the freelancing and the contracting where I get none of those things. Love, love, love it. Yeah, I take full-time jobs and I enjoy full-time jobs, but I kind of prefer the contracting and the freelancing. So tell me more about why you don't like it, and then we can talk more about its pros and cons, because there certainly are pros and cons. But I remember when I worked at Macy's, I was a contractor, and it was a contract pretty much without an end until it ended, and also until I quit, which I did. At times they were trying to get me to switch to full time, but they couldn't match what I was being paid as a contractor. I was being paid significantly more as a contractor. So I have been like, I would rather have that money than whatever full-time employee means to me, because to me it didn't mean anything. Scott says, I think from the US, since our Social Security safety net is completely non-existent and we need benefits to survive, if healthcare wasn't obnoxiously expensive, I'd be far more open to contract roles. Well, here's the thing. When I was living in America, I still preferred contract. I was like, please make me a contractor and a freelancer if possible. I always preferred to pay for my own health insurance through private insurance and eventually through the ACA marketplace, which again, if you're American, this makes sense. And if you're not, I apologize. But I always paid for my own insurance because I changed jobs so often and I was a freelancer here and a contractor there. It didn't make sense to keep keep switching to different companies' insurances and possibly lose my doctors and lose whatever I was doing at the time. So I preferred to just buy insurance privately, for which I was paying about 500 American dollars a month. In 2000, I moved out of the U.S. Help me, everybody. When did that happen? Early January, just after New Year's 2018. So even in 2017, I had American health insurance and I was paying $500 a month for that. But I love the contract because I don't want the benefits. That's just me. But let's talk more about pros and cons. Maggie, what do you see as some of the pros and cons to contract work? Scott says ACA helped for sure, though I'd prefer we just nationalize it. Sorry to get political up in here. Well, it's not political. Health shouldn't be political. So if I may comment on that, what I would say is this. Before the ACA, my health insurance was about $220 a month because I have nearly no risks for anything. And I didn't have children, I wasn't going to have children, and I am at nearly zero risk for nearly every disease on the planet. I just have like no risk factors. So back when they were assessing you by risk factors, I did very well with that. When the ACA was passed and it was it was approached from a different way, I had got worse insurance for $500 a month. But my thought at the time was, if I am someone who believes in getting more people health care, and if I'm going to personally subsidize that through a semi-socialist system, then I've got to pay that. Can't just be for that and then not pay for it. But obviously, it's very different here in Italy, if I may say for a moment, where in Italy I am a legal resident. I have a work visa. I have a residence permit. So I have an equivalent for you Americans. I have an equivalent of a green card in Italy. I am here legally. Because sometimes people ask. And that allows me to be on the Italy healthcare system. Italy does have nationalized healthcare. So you have a local doctor and you can go and see that doctor, and that is free. And you might get prescriptions, and those prescriptions are usually free or heavily discounted. My boyfriend takes blood pressure medication, and I think it costs him under $10 a month for it. I recently went to the emergency room with some allergic reactions, as some of you know. It was right after the Learning Design podcast. Whoa, remember I was complaining during that? Woo-hoo! Ended up in the emergency room. And that was completely free because of the level of emergency I was at. My boyfriend went to the emergency room with a level under that, and I think had to pay $20. Again, Italy has 60 million people. It's much easier to create something that works for 60 million people than America's 330 million plus people. So again, I don't want to be political here. I only know that that I have a very different feeling here in Italy. I believe the system will take care of me, and it does. And I pay into it, and it takes care of me. And I like that. It gives me confidence. So back to what you guys are saying. Jonathan, I'll get to your question in a moment. We've ended up on this whole other side thing. I hope you don't mind sticking around while we kind of go through the pros and cons of being a contractor. Let me write that down. Pros and cons of being a contractor. So let's see what anybody has said about that. Let's see. Brian says, definitely pros and cons. In reality, we're all contractors, just some of us get benefits. Most states are at-will employers. Yeah, what I found is people will say to me all the time, well, if I could be a full-time employee, there's more stability. And I say, I think in 2020 we learned there's no stability. We learned that anybody can be laid off, anybody can be furloughed, anybody can be fired. And so I feel like that stability isn't there. I feel like we're not very loyal to our employers, and our employers are no longer very loyal to us. And this is especially in America. So this may be cultural. I think India is different from what I hear from people, and I don't know much about Italy since I still do a lot of my work for America, but I would say that that's my impression from America. Let's see. Scott says the Italians have better food. Maybe that helps. It absolutely does help. And again, this is my opinion, but GMOs are illegal here. Farm animals can't be shot up with antibiotics and other drugs. And my local butcher kills her own cows, and the local guy in the village kills his own pigs. And that's what I'm eating. So, I mean, we're talking farm to table. So I've got but I'm out in the country, I'm not in the city. Brian says my issue is stability. I've been contracting for years, but now I have no idea where I'll have to move next, and that sucks. Bring on remote work. I agree, Brian. I'm pushing real hard for remote work. I know others are, and I've been extremely surprised. I really thought the pandemic would wake people up to UX being able to do pretty much all of its work, other than maybe an observational study, completely remotely, and yet I am seeing nearly every job require you to come sit in the office, and I guess I was explaining this to my Italian teacher today, so I asked her what is the word for like a whiteboard. Turns out the word for the whiteboard is the same as the word for a blackboard, and it is lavagna. It is not lasagna. Don't you guys go on a lasagna thing. It is lavagna. And I said, yeah, they think I have to like hang out at a whiteboard, but like I really don't, because I've got online stuff. Mike is here. Good to see you again, Mike. Mike, I think we connected from my talk last week, so thanks for joining. Mike says you owe your company nothing from a loyalty standpoint because they will hamstring you in a heartbeat. That can be true. So I know this will be an ongoing conversation with everybody about how we feel about contracting, pros and cons, and benefits from our companies. But let's get to some of the other questions. But you guys can keep posting your comments, and I'll read them out as they come in. So we did get the question from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan, for your patience. What are some of the costs associated with launching an app in the App Store? I'm not a developer, so I'd have to partner with someone to do that. But is there anything else you can think of? Oh, Jonathan, you've asked the right person, because I have launched an app to the App Store. Back in 2011, I had a startup in Silicon Valley, and I was doing the Silicon Valley startup thing for about 5 years, in addition to my regular jobs there. And we did launch apps both to the iTunes Store and to Google Play. Those apps are no longer available. I did shut down my company and put it out of business. Very unfortunate. Longer story, but let's just cut to the chase and answer your questions. Obviously, you've got to start with good UX research to determine if you should even be doing an app, or if your idea has any legs, or if this is all bull. Of course, if you find that your idea has possible legs, definitely prototype it, keep testing it, make sure you really want to build that app, because apps can be very expensive to build and maintain. Then, of course, you're doing all the UX work to make sure that you've got something designed that you can bring to a development company so that they can build it. Then you are bringing it to a development company and team so that they can build it. And I luckily found some good developers who worked on my stuff. I can recommend them if anybody is interested. They were a team in India, and they were really super. And what happens is the app building is one thing, but the app testing gets pretty crazy, because if you think about how many sizes our phones are, and how many variations there are in operating systems and in sizes and in different things, it's lots and lots of testing to make sure that this thing works. And then, of course, lots of maintenance, because as companies upgrade their operating systems, as new sizes of phones come out, you've got to make your thing work. So it's a lot of ongoing stuff. And I think I saw a statistic some years ago that the average app developer makes $2,000 on their app, if it's a paid app in some way. So a lot of people's dreams of, I'm going to have this app and everyone's going to love it and they're going to pay for it and I'm going to have all this money, it's usually an unrealistic fantasy. So I just tell people to please be very careful, go into apps very slowly, with a lot of careful UX research done first to make sure you really are building something that people are likely to want to use, because even though I had a great idea at the time, I unfortunately had a crappy potential customer base, and nobody would pay for the darn thing. Hey, you guys have been asking email questions and they just came in. I am so sorry I haven't seen them. So let me answer also some of the questions coming in from the emails. Let's copy and paste them. So, Jonathan, I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of what some of the costs are. I tell people to expect building an app to run you at least $10,000, possibly more, even using a country we think of as less expensive, like some of the Eastern European countries or some of the Indian teams. I hired for talent, so I got some great people, and they did a lovely job on my app, but ultimately I just couldn't get things going. Maggie says, I like the idea of remote work, but I like having easy access to my team. I know face to face interactions have helped with some communication issues and building trust. Sure. Plexus is here. Good to see you, Plexus. How's it going, Brett? He says, let's talk tools. Should UX practitioners care what tools they use? If a company wants a specific tool used, is that okay? Or should the company prioritize allowing practitioners to use their preferred tools? Great question. Really hot issue. I know a lot of people who come to me behind the scenes very mad, like, oh my God, I know I really need to be using Axure right now, but my company wants to use Figma. And how am I supposed to use Figma when it doesn't even do what Axure does? But I've been told I'm not allowed to use Axure. I have to use Figma. So I think there is technically in theory nothing wrong with a company saying, as part of our CX or UX strategy or our department strategy, these are the tools that we prefer to use. But I believe that what companies need to do is that they need to kind of anoint or allow, if they're only going to let you use one tool, and they are going to be tool specific. And I've worked at companies that said use whatever you're best at, and I've worked at companies that said you can only do this. What I believe is that where companies want to say we can only do this, you have to have at least one allowed tool of each type. So for example, Figma doesn't do what Axure does. So it doesn't make sense to say you can only use Figma and you can never use Axure or an Axure competitor. InVision is not an Axure competitor. InVision will not make a prototype that is as realistic as Axure. So again, you can do InVision if you want, but it's not really going to let you see how this thing really functions and works because it's lacking realism. So what I suggest to all companies is that if they are going to try to standardize tools, they have to allow one of each type or more, not just one. You can't just say everybody here uses Sketch. Well, that doesn't make sense. What if we need to do a realistic prototype? Maggie says, hey, for tools, I just do it and ask for forgiveness later, assuming I'm not breaking any hard rules or it's costing the company any money. I've done that as well. Like, well, they said OmniGraffle, but I really need a prototype, so I'm just going to start working in Axure. And oh, wouldn't you know, here it is in Axure. I do have friends who come to me behind the scenes and go, oh my God, they're making me use Figma and I need Axure. So I think companies have to consider, why are we using certain tools? What do we expect those tools to allow us to do? And to make sure that we have a good understanding of these tools, because it sounds like some companies do not. And certainly hiring managers as well. You know, when you put on I'm so surprised when I see job listings that say UX designer must use Adobe Creative Suite. Well, do you mean Adobe XD, or do you mean that I'm going to make stuff in Photoshop? Because I don't really make stuff in Photoshop anymore. I also don't use Adobe XD. I prefer Axure. If you really need me to use XD, I guess I'll learn it. But so that's my opinion on tools. I think it's not the end of the world if a company wants to mandate tools, but they need to mandate a suite so that we have tools available to the team that can accomplish every type of what we're doing. You know, if you are doing information architecture research and testing, give people access to Optimal Workshop. Don't tell them that they can't have that and everything's done in Figma. That's not a thing. So I think we have to make sure that there are tools available that match the team's needs and tasks, and that there is a library of tools and systems available. Plexus, I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. And now I'm going to go to email. Thanks to people for your patience. You've been waiting a long time. I didn't see those emails come in. Someone says, do you think going from UI, visual designer, to UX designer, to CX could be a career path, like a visual designer can jump to do UX, or does it require a completely different skill set? So I would say that a visual design and UX design do require a completely different skill set. I've got a slide that I normally show about this, and let's see if I can quickly get my slides up and show my screen. Where's my screen? Here we go. This is my screen. And let's open up that slide. I took a screenshot of it today and I emailed it to someone, so I should have this relatively handy. Help! Where's my screenshots? Oh, I don't think I saved it. Boo. Okay, let me open up PowerPoint really quickly just to illustrate this point. Here we go. PowerPoint, come on. Boo. Hold on, I have to find slide 135, evidently. No. Sorry, everybody. I'll be right with you. I promise we will get to all questions before our time together ends. Slide 135. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for slide 39. Not quite the same thing. Okay. Let's share my screen and let's talk about this slide for the question that was asked. Zoom. Hi. So this is a slide I show in a lot of my talks that are aimed at non-UX workers, but it's certainly good for you as well. And what I did was I researched what topics do you tend to learn about if you're getting a university degree in some sort of UX thing, like a human-centered design or human-computer interaction, and what things do you study when you are getting a degree in visual design or some sort of UI. And I found that there was very little overlap, that the UX university degree really focused, as it should, on cognitive psychology, theories of human-centered design, qualitative research, data viz, interaction design and prototyping, and usability studies. Those were what I saw most often across various UX university degrees. What I saw most often across more art degrees or visual or graphic design were typography, digital photography, branding principles, motion graphics, semiotics, the study of signs and symbols, so that might be your iconography, and color fundamentals. So that means, let's get back to me. Hello. So that means that in general, there really is almost no overlap between many of the tasks in UX and a lot of what we think of as UI. Let's see what else people are asking for. Okay, just checking. I'll get to the comments in a moment. So I would say that UI to UX does require a lot more education, does require a different tool set, does require different approaches, different processes. It's really a whole new set of things you're going to learn. When visual and graphic designers or UI designers just start putting UX on their resume and calling themselves UX designers, what they typically do is they say, well, I design interfaces, and wireframes are interfaces and models of screens, so I can make wireframes because I design screens, so I must be a UX designer. And it's a line of thinking that you could say almost makes sense, but the problem is that UX is so much more than did we design a screen. It's really hugely about psychology and human behavior and usability and accessibility, and so it's really important to have knowledge and education and training and practice in these areas rather than just saying, well, I'm a visual designer, so I think I can kind of jump into UX and just put that on my resume and stuff. People do that, but remember, you're not going to fool an expert. If you show your resume or your portfolio to someone who doesn't get UX, and you've said you do UX, they'll probably believe you. You could write anything. You could say you're a plumber. They'd believe you. But if you are showing that resume to a UX veteran or an expert, or you're interviewing with that person, or they're looking at your portfolio, they will be able to tell whether or not you are using a deep and high quality approach to UX, or whether you mostly make wireframes and you're calling it UX. because I believe strongly that wireframes are much, much more, UX is much, much more than wireframes. Let's see what else people are saying. We did get another question in the email. So this is a big question. Email person, I got you. You emailed 12 minutes ago. I got your question. It's huge. And let me put it in, and let's just answer a couple of the easy things from the chat room and then get to your big question. So, let's see. Scott says, extremely daft question, but what do Axure and Figma do that Sketch doesn't? And how do they differ from each other? I've only used Sketch and I just know of the others. And Maggie says, mostly around UI and prototyping capabilities. I hate prototyping in Sketch. It's not even real prototyping. You can bet I'm going to use Axure. So, again, I haven't looked at Figma yet, but I am under the impression that for the most part, Sketch is kind of it's where Illustrator and OmniGraph will meet. That you can use it for some visual design, you can use it for layouts and screens and wireframing, but it really doesn't do the type of realistic prototyping that Axure does. Axure does highly realistic prototyping. It does have more of a steep learning curve because it does more, so it's more to learn, but it does very realistic prototyping where you can really bring screens and paths and flows and steps and branches and errors to life. So that's going to be the main difference between Axure and any tool that is either mostly wireframes or is mostly visual designs or is mostly some of these prototyping tools I've seen for like micro animations. Like, hey, when someone puts their mouse here, this crazy rainbow is going to happen. Axure's not as strong with those. And other tools are stronger, but obviously it's not all about the animation of a micro moment. It's really also about the person, the user, and different types of users making it through tasks and workflows and processes. So I hope that helps a little bit. Now let's go to the big question that came in through the email and the anonymous question. Let's put anonymous questions back up on the screen. And guys, you can also use this link during the week. I collect these questions, and if I have any of them during the week, I just start with them when office hours starts, and I start with your questions. So you can always ask them during the week and find them here. So someone wrote, as a designer, how can I make sure I'm addressing the right problem? Well, this is an excellent question, and it's hard to know. The first thing you can do, of course, is not necessarily believe whatever you've been told by other people at the job or the client. So that means, this is my new thing that I'm going to be doing, putting on your critical thinking hat. This one's mine. You have to get your own. It doesn't really work with this headset. I'm going to have to figure out something else. But this is now my critical thinking hat. Previously, my favorite Mickey Mouse ears. And these were official Mickey ears, and these are steampunk. What do you think? I love them. This is my critical thinking hat. So if you want to solve the right problem, you have to put on your critical thinking hat, and you have to start being a detective, and you're going to have to do a lot more research, and you're going to have to make sure that you don't just go with what a stakeholder said or the business analyst said or the product manager said. I dealt with this a lot at jobs that I've had where people have said, okay, we found that mobile web users aren't always filtering their search results. So we want a project that will push them to filter their search results. And I said, get me data that shows that people who don't filter their search results are then having a problem. They're not buying. They're not happy. Show me something, because maybe they're just not filtering their search results, but they're perfectly happy. They're buying a lot and they're super satisfied. Just because there is a behavior doesn't mean there is a problem or something that we need to change. So, critical thinking hat on, and make sure that you are doing extra research, extra digging. Try to get people away from their biases. And anytime you hear a guess or assumption, point it out. Hey, you said that this is something we know about users, but how do we know that? And isn't it just really a guess or an assumption that we have about users? Or is it something we knew years ago, but now might be outdated, and no longer true? So it's important to do extensive research on our customers, who they are, what they need, their tasks or jobs to be done, their everything about them, and that will help point out the right problem. That will help us find the right problem. Also, if we can watch the customers or the users using this feature or this product, very often we will notice what's going wrong, and it may or may not be the problem that was originally brought to us. So I would say that a lot more CX and UX research, whether that is interviews, observational studies, or other listening labs, things like this. This will help us get to what the real problem or problems are, because very often, especially if you're at an agency, the outside client comes to you and says, we know what we want and we know what users want, and we just want you to make some new graphs for us for our dashboard. What if that's not really the problem with the dashboard? Very often that client doesn't want you to now start digging. So just remember, not everybody will let you dig because they are arrogant. It's, I say arrogance is confidence without merit. They are arrogant about what the problem is, and they don't want you to go digging to see if it's right or not because they want to be right. So just know that sometimes you can't solve the right problem because you are at a workplace where it's much more important for people to put glue on the house of cards and for people to be right than for us to find the real problems and work on the real solutions. So I'm sorry that may not be the good news you were looking for, but I am watching the email now, so if you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask it there, or you can certainly ask in the YouTube or LinkedIn chat rooms, as I am watching both of those. And again, remember everybody, please do subscribe on YouTube. I find the feed is much faster to YouTube, and we have a little bit more of a conversational feel. It's usually about 20 seconds delayed, whereas on LinkedIn, sometimes it can be minutes, and it does not give us some of that conversational feel because I ask you a question or for follow-up questions, and then minutes later I see something. So please shift over to YouTube where possible. I find it is just the better way to go. And of course, join my Slack. Let's see what else is cooking up in the chat room. Ex Libris says, I think ProtoPie will become an important tool since you can do micro interactions, but also realistic prototypes you can test. I have not played with ProtoPie yet. I have heard about it. My question is usually, does it have conditional logic and variables? That's really what makes Axure tick, is the ability to write if-else statements and have all of these possible paths and variables and stuff happening behind the scenes that allow things to look and feel realistic. I have to think like a programmer when I work in Axure, even though I'm not a programmer. So to me, any tool that does this, I'm okay with. I happen to be an Axure fan, but if you like something else and it does highly realistic prototypes, I'm for it. And by highly realistic, I don't mean visually designed or using our design system or having our branding. I mean that the interactivity and the way that the system operates is realistic to what the final product would be, that kind of realism. So let's see, we've got a new question from Maggie. Let's copy and paste that into our list of questions since those go in the YouTube description. Maggie says, I often hear how to best collaborate with developers and product managers. What about QA? How can I best collaborate with them? QA is great. I like to collaborate with them. Very often QA doesn't need that much from you, and it's different at different companies. Sometimes what QA needs from you might be some help with acceptance criteria. How do we know? What are all the ways that we would know that this thing is working correctly and should pass? Or sometimes QA wants you to help out with what are all the ways that we would know that this looks correct. So sometimes it's for you to look back at the visuals and see that things are laid out correctly, and some of that, the visual side or the design system, sometimes QA likes you to check on that. But really the best way to collaborate with any other role or domain at your company is just to ask them. Because I can say it's great to work with QA in this way, it's great to work with QA in this way, but ultimately I like to go to these people when I'm on a team and I say, here's what I normally do. What do you need from me? How can I help you? How do you need me to be available to you? What types of documentation or artifacts can I create for you that will make your job better? And at some jobs, QA didn't need much from me. And at other jobs, QA wanted to be more closely connected with me and they wanted me to help write or review acceptance criteria for QA testing. I did work a job once where QA wanted to send me their builds and they wanted me to walk through sample user workflows and actually do some testing and send them back bugs. And so I was sending them bugs. So it's been different at each job. I can only say that every possible domain and role that we could be collaborating with, we should. They should get to know us and what we do. They should see that we do so much more than drawing wireframes or making screens pretty. We should show them everything we're doing. We should collaborate with these other teams to see what they need out of this project or what they need from us and how we can facilitate their work. And then I always tell people that, especially with engineering teams, so that's usually developers and QA, but sometimes DevOps and some other roles as well, if you get a trouble ticket from them, like a Jira ticket or a version 1 ticket or something that says, we're not sure about, we're building this right now and we've hit a wall, or there's something we're not sure about, there's an ambiguity, or you're missing something from your design in a certain case, you answer that immediately. Do not say, oh, it's engineers, I don't like them that much, I'm kind of busy right now, I'll get back to them tomorrow. You are technically now blocking the Agile team. And believe me, Agile already hates UX. They completely poop on us. They want us knocked off of the known planet. You do not want to be blocking the Agile team because you thought you had something better to do. Make them a priority. Teach them that they can count on you to give them answers quickly. Sometimes my answer is, hey, I see this ticket. I don't have the answer for you right now, but I'm working on it. Give me X amount of time. Or, hey, I see this, I have to chase down somebody else to check this out and then do this, give me X amount of time. So make sure that you are always staying on top of these tickets and you are answering them quickly, even if it's just to keep the juggling balls in the air and let them know you've seen it and you're working on it. You do not want to hear week after week you are holding up the Agile team. You do not want to hear in a retro that the Agile sprint was thrown off and murdered and killed and assassinated because you didn't answer the team quickly enough. So one of the best things we can do for engineering is answer them immediately, as often as possible when they have a problem or question for us. This is Office Hours, Ask Me Anything, and I've got a few minutes left. Don't forget to subscribe, kids. I'm shooting first for 500 YouTube subscribers. I'm almost there, and then the goal will be 1,000. So please, if you're enjoying these, please tell friends about it. Don't keep it a secret. I'm for everybody. Please tell your friends about the Delta CX channel and all the live streams that I do. We want to get all the CX and UX people all around the world joining in, either live or watching these later on, because they're all archived in the playlists. Just check the playlists. They're all archived there, and everything's available for free to everybody. So this is a completely free archive of CX and UX help, techniques, ideas, opinions, and hopefully helpful to everybody. So please help me spread the word, won't you? Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do that. I'm going to close my PowerPoint. I think we're done there. Let's see if we've got any more questions. No questions in the email. And again, this link is good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a one-question survey that collects no information about you. So I don't know who any of these people asking questions are. I'm surprised every time when someone writes me later and says, that was my question. I have no idea. You can always send anonymous questions all through the week, or you can join us here live. Normally, I am here Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. Italy time, but today I had to reschedule, for Thursday because of a Tuesday doctor's appointment. Let's see if I've missed anything in the chat room today. If you posted something and I missed it, will you please repost it? Or if you have anything to add, about pros and cons of contracting or anything else, let me know what your questions are. Let's see. Quick note about my Slack channel. I'm going to start creating some Slack-only events. Today, we're going to hold a Zoom hangout. I don't know if anyone will show up. It's all an experiment, but we'll be live on Zoom. If anybody wants to hang out, we can talk friendly like, or we can talk UX like. I'm just happy to connect with people on a more direct and personal level. So if you'd like to be a part of that, join the Slack channel and go to the live events room, #live events, to see what's coming up. And we'll also have the Slack, the Zoom conversation information there today for people to join in. But, totally optional. But that hopefully I will eventually have some Slack-only perks. And let's see. Nope, this is just a sign that my dog has entered the fence, but I think she's here. Is the dog here? No, dog's out. Okay, looks like my dog's wandering around and I'm getting notified about it because she wears a GPS tracker. Looks like she's going to see her best friend across the street. Okay. She's across the street. My dog has many friends. One lives across the street. Any other questions, you guys? If not, we'll wind up for today. And just remember, we'll be back on Monday with a live podcast talking about surveys. Are they ever worth it? How do you get them right? Can you get them right? Surveys are tough. So that will be Monday, Tuesday, office hours. Wednesday, let's talk about job titles. Yuck. But we need to talk about it because they're yuck. Thanks to everybody who joined today. It was a really active group with lots of great questions. I've got a big pile of questions that will end up in the YouTube archive description. And again, this is always archived on YouTube. Just go there, grab the link, send them to people, send them to your boss. And tune in for the podcasts as well. Hope you all got episode 50, I think it was last night. Lucky episode 50 was Design Thinking Has Jumped the Shark. Make sure you check that one out. So thanks again to everybody for joining in. I think I will play us out right now. But if I don't catch you before, have a super weekend. Stay safe and healthy. That's number one importance right now. Please do all the things you can to stay safe and healthy. And there is still a pandemic out there. Please don't forget. And I will catch you guys soon. And good night.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.